Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Friday. It's the weekend. We got college football tonight, playoff game, Indiana, Notre Dame. We got NFL football on Saturday. We got college football on Saturday. It's a big, huge sports weekend, and we're going to get you ready for it right here today on Fearless. We're going to cover several different topics. Steve Kim is in Saudi Arabia. He's going to join us, I'd say, in about 45 minutes. We're going to start, though, by talking about what's going on in the NBA and the whole NBA discussion around TV ratings. I know we've addressed this earlier in the week, but as more information has become available and more people have offered up their opinions, this conversation just keeps getting better and better. We're going to bring Skap Attack in. You know Skap Attack. He's been on the show. He has his own YouTube channel, YouTube page called Skap Attack. Talks about LeBron James and the NBA quite a bit. I think he's got an interesting perspective on this entire conversation. So we'll start there with my take. Then we'll bring in Skap Attack. And then eventually we'll get to Steve Kim and we'll talk about the NBA deal, that discussion, and we'll talk about Stephen A. Smith's interview with Cameron, where Stephen A. Smith once again calls me the devil. We'll talk about Jon Gruden saying that Lamar Jackson is the MVP in the NFL this season. I think it's kind of a silly take. Josh Allen is the MVP. I think they're like 12-2 and or something along 11-3, and the Baltimore Ravens are 9-5. I'm not sure if Lamar Jackson, he's having a great season, but he's not the MVP. But we'll get into that with Steve Kim. Obviously, we'll talk about the NFL and college football stuff. We'll bring up, hopefully we'll have time to bring up Woody Johnson, allegedly making moves in the NFL based off of Madden ratings. I don't buy it. We'll bring TJ Moe into the conversation. Stephen A. Smith kind of made some threatening comments towards Aaron Rodgers that kind of connects to what we'll be talking about in the first part of the show. Then, of course, Shamika Michelle will close us out. We'll find out what you guys have been talking about in the chat. Big, monster, compelling show planned for you today. Start popping in the chats. Let Shamika know what you guys want to talk about, what you find interesting, what you have for me at the end of the show that we can address. Any questions, any comments. Love for you guys to super chat. Shamika, of course, always makes it a point to read the super chat. So if you really want to be heard on this show, send us a super chat. But if you really want to help support the show, go to fearlessmission.com and become a subscriber. Use the promo code FEARLESS, and you can get $20 off your yearly subscription. And that gives you access to everything that we do here at Fearless and everything that we do at The Blaze as well. I need you to become a subscriber. It's the greatest thing you can do to support me and this channel, and a point of view, a way of talking about the sports world and the rest of society that tries to stick to a biblical worldview. Also, I want to thank our great friends at First Cup Coffee. Tiffany, has COVID and hasn't been around for a couple of days. And so I don't have my first cup of coffee, and I'm having to dig deep to be as sharp as I want to be, because First Cup lifts me up in the morning. You guys see me sipping it pretty much every show. First Cup is a Christian-owned patriot coffee company that stands for core values, family, and building community across the nation. First Cup's freshly roasted beans are delivered in ground or whole bean, pods, and bulk. Go to firstcup.com, use the promo code FEARLESS, and save an additional 10% on your order. And if you subscribe, you can get another 10% for the life of your subscription. Thank you, First Cup. I recommend it to everyone. All right, now let's get into the meat of today's show, or the first part of the meat of today's show is J.J. Redick and LeBron James have both chimed in on what's the matter with the NBA. And so I want to play you a couple of clips from them. And then I want to even start, before I get to those clips, I want to credit Jason McIntyre, who is Colin Cowherd's sidekick on The Herd, I want to credit him, and I say this in all seriousness and authenticity, for kicking off and being a spark plug in a fascinating conversation about what's going on in the NBA and what's going on with NBA ratings and why the NBA is less relevant. Jason McIntyre pointed a finger at the Inside the NBA crew, Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal, and said, hey, look, they're so hypercritical. That's why ratings are down. The number one platform promoting the NBA keeps dumping on the game, and fans are believing him. I happen to disagree with Jason's take, but it has sparked an interesting conversation and a worthy conversation. And Jason yesterday pointed out that J.J. Redick kind of chimed in and made a similar point as Jason McIntyre had. And he's like, hey, go pick a fight with J.J. Redick. He's a former NBA player. He's the head coach of the Lakers. He's backing me up, not by name, but by argument. He's backing me up. And then McIntyre also, yesterday, late last night, tweeted out, hey, watch Big Noon Kickoff, Game Day, every NFL pre- and post-game show, any Major League Baseball studio show. League partners tearing down the sport and taking a dump on players nightly so they can protect their era, which was vastly inferior. Sorry, it's true, is dumb. Let me translate that if you didn't follow. He's saying that Barkley and Shaq are sitting on TNT tearing down this current era of NBA players and style of play because they're trying to protect Michael Jordan and the era that they played in. And then he throws in that this era is vastly inferior, the old era is vastly inferior to what we have now. It's a silly argument, but it is reflective of a conversation that's going on across social media. The LeBron James, Michael Jordan GOAT debate. Don't blame Barkley, don't blame Inside the NBA, blame social media in the LeBron James, Michael Jordan war. Blame Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith, who had the LeBron James feud going on for years on ESPN. It's that whole discussion about where's LeBron rank in history is why there's so much conversation about, hey, what's going on with this era of basketball? Is it as good as the previous era? And when a J.J. Redick, when he was at ESPN, made the passing comment that, hey, these guys in previous eras were playing against plumbers. Don't be shocked when people are like, oh, hold up, man, plumbers? You know what kind of great athlete a David Thompson was, a Michael Jordan was? You start denigrating the past, and of course you're going to spark a conversation of people that actually witnessed the past say, I'm not so sure. And then when you have this big showcase event, and if you really want to blame someone for sparking this conversation about what's the matter with the NBA, it's inferior, if you really want to know what has driven that conversation to the level where it's at right now, it's NBA All-Star Game. The NBA for the last 10 to 12 years, maybe 15 years, their NBA All-Star Game, which had been one of its top events. Of all the All-Star games, the NBA's All-Star Game was a bigger deal than the NFL Pro Bowl, a bigger deal than even the Summer Classic, Major League Baseball's All-Star Game. NBA All-Star Weekend was a big deal. And for the last decade, the NBA All-Star Game has been a 2.5 hour commercial of, hey, these guys don't want to play the game. They're lackadaisical about the game. There is no real competition. It's a horrible showcase of the game. It's a big, gigantic commercial of like, look how much we've paid these tatted up tall guys who don't really care about the game. Look at them. They won't even compete. That is what has hyper-focus the conversation around the NBA and its poor play and its jacking up of three-pointers and its non-competitive and its jersey swaps. And then by the time you tack on the super teams and there's no real competition and that guys are best friends off the court and they're plotting and scheming, hey, how can we play together? When Draymond Green is the biggest defender of LeBron James, and they've never played on the same team together. That's what makes people say, hey, there's a real problem here. There's a lack of competition here within the NBA, and then you tack on load management. You can't blame this on Barkley and all these other people when you can just go look. You can go to basketballreference.com and say, well, damn, Michael Jordan played 81, 82 games like in the overwhelming majority of the seasons he played in the NBA. I think he played 14 years, and I think 11 of those, he played at least 80 games during the regular season. I think at age 40 with the Washington Wizards, at the end of his career, the man played 82 games. Players don't do that now. They've had to come up with rules that you can't be eligible for an award unless you play 65 games. You can't blame this on Barkley and the inside the NBA crew. These are just facts, and we're living in an era right now where people don't ignore facts. We're living in the era of the Great Awakening, and where people are tired of corporate legacy media driving the conversation. They don't trust corporate legacy media because corporate legacy media is a bunch of race baiting, distraction creating idiots who don't know about the game, don't care about the game, and basically it's a DEI exercise. Hey, let's put people on TV who, again, Stephen A. Smith is at the top of the field. He's lied about his own basketball career. He's been caught slipping so many times that he doesn't know what he's talking about, and you're wondering why people don't trust legacy media, and now they're looking to social media and people like Skap Attack and others that really care about the game and are doing a lot of research and use stats and do all kinds of research to present a factual, reality-based interpretation of what we're seeing. They don't trust the legacy media, and nor should they. It's a group of idiots. And a lot of it is, hey, let's install a woman who's never played this game. She's just here for eye candy. She sits in the middle of these discussions and brings everything down. And the one show that we like inside the NBA, oh, guess what? They don't just throw a woman on there and dirty that up with an eye candy host. They have Ernie Johnson. It's a group of men having a discussion, and men have tough discussions and deal in reality and speak uncomfortable truths. You can't blame Barkley and Shaq and these guys because, one, they know that if we don't tell the truth, we're going to lose our audience as well. This great awakening that's happening, people turning to alternative media. So that's all just a backdrop because the discussion, whether Jason McIntyre likes it or not, whether JJ Redick likes it or not, it's going to happen, and it is happening. And people are reacting to that, even to LeBron James, and we'll start there. We'll play LeBron James acknowledging that there's a problem in the NBA. Let's watch LeBron James.
Got to do something. Obviously, the last couple of years have not been a great All-Star game that Sunday night. But I mean, listen, it's a bigger conversation. It's not just the All-Star game. It's our game in general. Our game it's a lot of threes being shot. Mm-hmm. So it's a bigger conversation, just the All-Star game.
You can't blame that on Charles Barkley and Shaquille O'Neal. That's the face of the NBA acknowledging the facts. hey man, this game isn't as compelling. People standing around the three-point line, jacking up three-pointers, it's not as compelling. That's LeBron James. In a rare moment of transparency and honesty, hats off to LeBron James. I don't want to disparage or add any snark to that. Hats off to LeBron James for acknowledging what's obvious. The game has changed, and not in a real productive way. It's a three-point shooting contest. And there's no diversity in style or play. But here's J.J. Redick, LeBron's coach, an analytics guy, a guy who's struggling a bit as a head coach, but he kind of, and he says a lot here, his explanation of what's going on with NBA ratings, but at one point, he does take some shots at the inside the NBA crew. Let's play J.J. Redick.
There's a lot of probably whys. I would speculate some of it is streaming. Some of it is the fact that in my own household, we have YouTube TV and that we don't have Spectrum right now. We have Spectrum Wi-Fi, but not Spectrum cable. And my family can't watch Lakers games that aren't nationally televised. I do have a free account from Spectrum. I'm just too lazy to set it up. We're clear on that. Spectrum has been very good to me.
You probably send somebody out there.
Yeah. But my point to that is, in my own household, I have 9 or 10 subscriptions. I lose my password to all of these. I think with the death of cable, people unplugging and then relying on streaming networks, I think it's not easy to watch an NBA game, to find an NBA game. I think that's part of it. Maybe that's a small percentage of it, but that's certainly a factor in all of this. I don't think we as, and by we, I was part of it, we as the sort of national partners have done a good job of storytelling, of celebrating the game. If I'm a casual fan and you tell me every time I turn on the television that the product sucks, well, I'm not gonna watch the product. And that's really what has happened over the last 10 to 15 years. I don't know why. It's not funny to me. Nothing is entertaining to me. This game should be celebrated. I've watched the league evolve. I'm in this league right now. I can tell you without fact, or with fact, that the league is more talented and not just raw talent. The league is more talented and skilled than it was 18 years ago when I was drafted. That's a fact. There are more players that are excellent. There are more teams that are excellent. I heard when I played for, 4 or 5 years, well, why don't we even play the regular season? We know who's going to be in the finals. Well, guess what? We have parity now. And we're not celebrating parity. We're not celebrating the fact that the Western Conference is as loaded as it is. We're playing a Sacramento team tonight that's incredible, with incredible talent, and they've got a losing record. It's not because they're a bad basketball team. I don't know. We don't have anybody that's willing to step up to the fact that this is an awesome game and we should talk about it and celebrate it in a positive way. That doesn't mean we don't critique it. We should critique it, but we should celebrate it. And nobody's doing that. And the people that are have a small niche following on Twitter.
No one is celebrating the game. Cry me a river. This sounded, he just went full Caitlin Clark. It's my job to celebrate Asia Wilson and these black women that came before me, and it's your job to celebrate the NBA. They can put whatever garbage product they want out there, and it's your job to celebrate it. And people should be celebrated. How about every 2 weeks when they get that paycheck? Is it celebrated then? The fans have celebrated sports and overpaid athletes and coaches and everybody for decades. We've lost the balance that we actually need someone, what Barkley and those guys are doing, but whether they do it or not, it's going to be done over social media. People are going to nitpick this game, as they should. They're going to examine its changes and its devolvement into a three-point shooting contest. How are you going to celebrate the All-Star game? It's a hot mess. How are you going to celebrate Kawhi Leonard and all the other, Joel Embiid, and all the other players that have to load manage, can't play back-to-backs, refuse to play 80 games, 82 games, refuse? How are you going to hey, whatever we throw out there to you, it should be celebrated, and the people that do celebrate it have a very small niche, and no one wants to celebrate us. That's hot garbage. That's an excuse. The product isn't as good. The officiating, the lack of defensive competitiveness, the lack of physicality, all the flopping. They've softened the game. It's the players, and it's what we tolerate, and it's what we've. They don't want to make the hard decisions. Someone has to actually take care of the game and show real leadership. And one of the main things that needs to happen, you got to shrink the schedule. The players make way too much money to care about playing 82 games. That's the reality. Shrink it down to 60, everybody has to take a haircut financially. They're all still going to be making great money, but if you want real competition, if you want the guys to go out there on that court and compete like it really matters, not be hungover, high, drunk, whatever, from partying the night before, shrink the schedule to about 60 games. Let's have a real conversation about how to improve the NBA. Instead of whining about the people that are saying, hey, this ain't it. And we'll get into this with Steve Kim a bit later in the show, but the same thing is eventually going to happen to the NFL. It is a ticking bomb in the NFL. And their issue is a lot, maybe even mostly related to officiating. And mainstream corporate media does its best to minimize talking about how bogus the officiating is in the National Football League, how inconsistent it is, how the referees have been overburdened with too many judgment calls. And so you'll hear a little chirping from time to time. You'll hear Troy Aikman say, put a skirt on him when some quarterback draws some roughing the passer call that's bogus. But you never hear the full-blown conversation. People will hint at it. But trust me, Troy Aikman, Tom Brady, Tony Romo, any of these guys calling games and talking about the game knows that the NFL isn't the same league that it once was. And they know that the accomplishments of these players doesn't really compare to what the Dan Marinos, the Joe Montanas, the John Elways, what they did in the previous era when it was a full contact sport for quarterbacks. When defensive backs could actually occasionally put their hands on a defender, when referees weren't handing out first downs with illegal contact calls, and then you don't even never see the replay. They know officiating is a problem and it's undermining the credibility of the game, and that conversation is happening over social media every NFL Sunday, every NFL Monday, every NFL Thursday. And just because the mainstream media won't dive into it full blown doesn't mean that conversation isn't going on every single Sunday. It's the number one conversation going on. And the league partners are trying their best to ignore it. But there is a crisis. And just like most people, everybody ignores a problem until it becomes too big of a problem and you can't ignore it, rather than addressing the problems that everybody sees early on. I'm going to hit the pause button here because I want to bring Jay Skap Attack into the conversation. Jay's put out a pretty good video about all the complaining going on in the NBA. He kind of attacked all the people trying to defend the NBA and making kind of ridiculous statements about the NBA. But we'll bring on Jay Skap Attack next. But before we get to Jay, I want to talk to you guys about one of our purposes here, our main purpose here at Fearless. We promote the worldview that life begins at conception, and that's why we have partnered with Preborn, the organization that supports our worldview at the highest level. Preborn provides expectant mothers who are considering abortion a ultrasound. Ultrasound costs $28. It introduces the heartbeat to the baby. Then they provide an image of the baby in the womb. Now the woman is more than twice as likely to choose life. That's when Preborn steps up and offers up to 2 years of support for that woman and that baby. Preborn is amazing. It's saving babies' lives every single day. All we have to do to support Preborn is give a little money, whether it be $28, which pays for one ultrasound, $140, which pays for 5 ultrasounds, or maybe you're looking to be a leader, because we're looking for leadership gifts right now during this Christmas season. $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. This really, really puts Preborn into action, saves a lot of babies' lives. It's one of the greatest things you can do. It's a gift to yourself to make you feel good, to make sure that God knows you are doing your best to protect his most precious, precious thing, babies. We're here to multiply. We're here to develop new life. Don't let the abortion, crazy, demonic people destroy that. Support Preborn. 2 ways to give to Preborn. Pound 250 on your smartphone. Say the keyword baby. That's pound 250. Say the keyword baby. Or give the way that I prefer to give. Preborn.com/fearless. That's preborn.com/fearless. Jay Skap Attack. Next.
Your brain, exploit yourself for gain, exceed your own expectation, expose your every flaw, explain to one and all how to excel in every situation. But don't put an X in my Christmas, 'cause Jesus is the reason for it all. Yes, Santa Claus is cool, but when I celebrate my Yule, it's about that baby in the manger, and not how I deck my halls. Don't put an X in my Christmas, oh, 'cause Xmas in my world will never do. But if you have to put an X in something, then Twitter's got an X that's just for you.
His words are our religion, no regrets in our decisions. We all wanna go to heaven with freedom. It's my obligation, no hate, discrimination, raising up your hands for freedom.
All right, welcome back. Let's roll down to Florida and bring in our man Jay Skap Attack. Jay, I don't know if I've done. Oh, I love your background. I don't know if I've done complete justice to the video you put out yesterday, I believe, but I enjoyed it. You kind of went at some of the people that are making different suggestions about fixing the NBA and maybe in a little bit of denial about what the problems are within the NBA. Describe the video, do it the justice that I could not do.
Sure, Jason. Well, there's been a lot of there's the thumbnail. Obviously, there's been a lot of suggestions over the last couple weeks as to how we can improve and fix the NBA product, which, by the way, is pretty ironic because no one really even wanted to admit there was a problem with the NBA in the mass media until pretty recently, like as in this year. And even Adam Silver is now admitting that there is some issues inherently within the game. But the video video that you highlight, yeah, I'm just kind of talking about some of the dumber suggestions by, mass media personalities. Gilbert Arenas last year suggested that we just ban all European players, for instance, and we have Nick Wright, who, shout out to Nick Wright, who is one of my least favorites in all of the NBA media, sports media as a whole, who suggested that dunks should now be worth 3 points as well to incentivize dunking in the NBA again. So just some crazy and outrageous suggestions floating around, and I just highlight some of them in that piece. And I'm actually, Jason, working on an uncharacteristically lengthy piece where I really highlight what is at issue with the NBA. Now, I don't really exactly know how we can fix it, but I am highlighting the totality of the problems. And the three-point line has drawn the primary amount of ire right now on a national stage, but it goes well beyond the amount of threes that are being taken today, in my opinion.
Well, unpack some of that. I'm sure load management has to be part of that argument, but what are the underlying or larger issues that perhaps we're missing?
Well, first of all, let's just really highlight exactly what we're talking about and define the parameters of this conversation. So there's a bombshell report flying around that indicates that viewership in the NBA this year as compared to 12 years ago, so that's the 2012 season, is down 48%, while it is down a staggering 25%, Jason, from just last season. So based on this time last year, the league is seeing 25% reduction in viewership over its four principal platforms, which is ESPN, ABC, TNT, and NBA TV. So 25% less from just last year. And to put that figure in full context, over those four platforms right now, at the quarter point of this NBA season, NBA games are generating 1.4 million views per game. Okay, the WNBA this season, over those overlapping platforms, when you look at their regular season and postseason, averaged 1.2 million per game. Jason, when the WNBA is closing in on the NBA in terms of viewership, Houston, we have a problem. And again, it's for some reason the three-point line, which everyone's fixating on. And there is, without a doubt, a lot of three-point shooting going on. It's up to almost 38 shots a night, which is 3 more than last year. It's 15 more than 10 years ago. But at its core, at the heart, the NBA has a competition problem. The league itself has de-incentivized competing, and the greatest players of the era, starting around the 2010-2011 season and onward, just stopped wanting to compete overall to win anything. They started joining each other in the offseason, building super teams, becoming best friends with each other, making a lot more money, by the way, Jason, fully guaranteed. And they just stopped caring about playing games and competing and trying hard on a nightly basis. It's a fundamental issue at its core of competition. It started years ago. There's no easy fix. It's not an easy answer, but this didn't just happen overnight. We've been coming to this point for about 10 to 15 years now.
Skap, it sounds like you're pointing a finger at LeBron James. He would be something happened in 2009 or 10, I believe, where he made the decision to head down to Miami. And that you're saying is the breaking point where it became less about competition and more about, because competition is different than chasing rings. And it became more about chasing rings than competing. Is that your argument?
He's certainly part of the equation and a very large part, Jason, but it did start in the league offices somewhere around 2004. They just started litigating out defense. And, just to take you on a quick trip, I would like to touch on LeBron at some point because I think he is part of the major issue, which is kind of hilarious, ironic, and hypocritical that he's now talking about the problems. You played that bite in your open. He's talking about the problems and how the NBA has a lot of issues. He's a major part of the issues, but it started even before him. if you go back to 1995-96 season, that was, as many people will remember, the 72-10 run by the Chicago Bulls, that famed 72-win season where Jordan won his 4th league MVP. The Chicago Bulls won the 4th NBA championship. But something else happened that year that didn't happen for the first time, and it was like 40 years. For the first time since 1956, in the 95-96 season, league-wide scoring averages dipped below 100 points per game for league-wide averages. And there was just this decade-long shift where scoring floated around the mid-90s, and the NBA thought that it was an eyesore. They thought that they needed to do something to enhance offense and get scoring up. And this was despite, Jason, the NBA being in its golden era in terms of popularity and viewership. As scoring was plummeting, viewership was soaring. As you can see in the NBA Finals, every year was around 20 million viewers per game in the finals. And that peaked out in the 1998 finals with Jordan, where that got 30 million viewers a night on average for that 6-game series, including 36 million views in Game 6, which is still to this day the highest watched basketball game ever recorded. Now, it got even worse throughout the early 2000s. Scoring dipped to 93 in 2004, and the league absolutely panicked and lost their mind, and they eradicated hand checking, and this era of lack of defense was initiated in 2004. But they still were defending in the league because those players that were in the league at that time had that defensive mindset and ideology. The greatest players at that time were defending. Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan. They weren't just the best defensive players in the league at that time. They're some of the best defenders ever at their positions. Somewhere along the line, though, Jason, these players stopped caring about playing defense. They stopped wanting to compete on that end. We've swelled now. We're in the mid 100s. We're like 114 a game right now, scoring average right now. It's 20 points higher than back then. And even back then, when the NBA thought they had this big point scoring problem, in the 2004 finals, that was still 18 million people tuned in a night to watch that series. And it was over 20 million views per game for the last two. Jeez, we're at like 10 million viewers a night in the NBA Finals right now. It's an abysmal product, and it's not about the lack of talent. JJ, I saw you play, is talking about lack of talent. It's about a lack of will and desire to compete defensively. LeBron, though, elevated the lack of desire to compete when he came along and took his talents to South Beach. But I don't know, do you want to unpack some of this defensive conversation, or do you want to dig in really into LeBron James and the Pied Piper that he's been to lead the other greats of his era to do the same damn thing, which is just join forces and not want to win challenging actual titles?
Skap, you like bad mouthing LeBron? Go ahead.
I'll just put it this way.
I'm not going to stop you.
The modern era of the NBA as we know it, the merger occurred ABA-NBA in 1976. The 70s were viewed as kind of like a dark age of NBA basketball. In the 1979-1980 season, we get Irvin Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. The two of these guys unite to absolutely salvage the NBA. Hell, maybe basketball as a whole. They uplift the entire product of the NBA, and then in comes Michael Jeffrey Jordan in 1984, and he just ratchets us up to another even higher level that was really couldn't even be anticipated at that time, into that mid-90s era where you get 25, 30 million people a night watching NBA Finals games. He kind of seeded the way, handed it over to Kobe Bryant, I think, took the reins at some point. Whatever year you want to argue that transition took place, whether Kobe really became the best player in whatever, 01, 03, but Kobe took the reins from MJ, and he might not have uplifted it or taken it to a higher level than Jordan, but he at least held the line. Like, the NBA was still a very, very enjoyable product, a very popular product when Kobe Bryant was in his peak and in his prime. But then LeBron comes along, and now for the first time in the sport's really modern history since that 76 merger, we have a guy who has presided over the decline of the sport. He's going to leave it in exponentially worse situation than when he received it. And it really just does have to do with his lack of desire to compete like all the other guys that came before him. He couldn't do it, Jason. In 2008, 2009, he had the #1 seed in the NBA playoffs. He was the league MVP. They won the most games in the regular season those 2 years. He flamed out before the NBA Finals, and he just looked around at his supporting cast and said, I can't do it. I need more help. No fault in that, Jason, but he didn't just go to get help. He went and joined a top 3 player in the NBA at the time in Dwayne Wade and his primary competition in his own conference, and they recruited another top 25 player at the time in Chris Bosh. It was an unbeatable super team, and he squeezed everything he could get out of that, and then he went to another super team back in Cleveland with Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving. And at that point, you have Kevin Durant and Steph Curry looking around, who were the other best players in the league at this time, saying, well, if he can do it, why can't we? If LeBron can have super teams and play with his buddies and have a fun, enjoyable time on the court and compete for championships, I should say steal them, why can't we do it too? So then Steph Curry and Kevin Durant decide to join up and get into the super team mix as well. And it just all coalesced in that like 2010 decade to really destroy the competitive balance of the NBA and just destroy the desire of players to compete at all. And again, like I said, complicated because there's so many other things that are ramping up in addition to that happening in the background, like the contracts swelling out of control, total and full guarantees. I mean, it's just the social media infusion into the NBA where players are essentially celebrities now. And basically, Jason, these guys care more about their bank accounts and their celebrities, their celebrity status, the amount of likes they get, the views they get on social, how many followers they have. It's all become about that, and winning has just become secondary, and it has just permeated the product to such a degree that it can't help but have seepage into regular fans like me and so many others that grew up loving this sport and can barely stomach watching the games on a nightly basis.
They've lost the plot. They don't have compelling stories. Zion Williamson was supposed to be the next big thing. He's eaten his way out of that. They don't have anybody. Ja Morant carried guns and went into a strip club and decided to be a rapper more than he has, wanting to be a compelling player. And they just kind of, and so what they could not anticipate, and I think this is an under-discussed, and it's new. I wouldn't even say it's under-discussed, but people haven't realized. Caitlin Clark has actually hurt the NBA. That there used to not be anything interesting going on in basketball during those summer months. Well, we just had a very fascinating basketball story all summer with Caitlin Clark versus the angry black women of the WNBA. That's a fascinating story, and it's a basketball story, and the NBA doesn't have anything to compete with that. Nothing. And so the NBA looks it's a lot less compelling. It looks a lot less exciting when, hey, I can go watch a spoiled, entitled guy who may or may not be load managing this night. I can go watch him jack up a bunch of three-pointers. The competition's not there. The storyline's not there. There's been this new introduction of a basketball storyline built around Caitlin Clark and women's basketball. The competition is actually getting to the NBA. They've created Frankenstein with the WNBA. They've financed it for 28 years, and some woman has now popped up that's made the WNBA interesting. Now, she may have just, undermined herself, but I do think it's impacting the NBA. I don't even know what's the story? There used to be, and Skap, you're too young, but I remember every offseason for 3 or 4 years would be like, is this the year Jordan's finally going to figure out how to play and win a title? what's going to happen between Magic and Larry and which one is really better, blah, blah, blah. Allen Iverson, is his style of play going to actually lead to a chance? Can Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal coexist? Can Kobe Bryant take the Lakers to a championship without Shaquille O'Neal? What is the NBA storyline? Because the Michael Jordan LeBron deal, it's over. Michael Jordan won that. The documentary Last Chance or Last Run, Last Dance, to me settled that. When people got a reminder of who Michael Jordan was, that I don't know, what is the NBA's top storyline this season? Nikola Jokic going for a fourth MVP?
Bronny James making his debut.
Bronny James is actually their most compelling storyline, and that's a flop. It's destroyed.
It's actually, whenever Bronny does anything, even in the G League, it's like top news on ESPN.com.
Yes.
It's one of the top 8 little headline story articles that they present upon signing in, because Bronny James had a decently effective performance in the G League. So that might have been a tongue-in-cheek comment there or a joke, but it actually is. Bronny James has been a major storyline in the league this year, which is pretty pathetic, because the Lakers are teetering.
Who's the other rookie? Who's the top rookie of the year? Is it Dalton Connect? I don't know. Who is it?
He's
Some
in
foreigner that I don't know.
Dalton's in the mix. He's probably in the top 2, but this was a down class in general. It's just been a down year, honestly, for rookies. But just to answer your question,
I gotta say this for me. I gotta say this for Wemby. I have no interest. He's not Ralph Sampson. He's not Patrick Ewing. He's not Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He's 7'4". He's a beanpole. I have no interest.
And he's connected to Popovich.
Yeah, but he jacks up 3-pointers and he's 7'4". He's not a fascinating story to me. All these super tall guys, because I guess there's some 7'9" guy coming. I got no interest in guys that don't have to jump to dunk. But anyway, he doesn't have a shot. I just don't know. I don't know what their story is.
I'm with you on Wembanyama. I think there was a suggestion around league circles before the year that there was going to be some meteoric season 2, step up for him. We were going to see LeBron, from season 1 to 2 had a humongous increase. Luka Doncic had a big increase from season 1 to 2. These kind of, historical type prospects that came in that we've seen over the last 2 decades generally have this meteoric rise into year 2, and Wembanyama just hasn't done it. He's essentially the same player as he was last year. But I think if you force me to pinpoint a storyline right now, honestly, it would just be Nikola Jokic going for a 4th NBA MVP, because there's only 5 guys right now in NBA history, Jason, that have more than 3. So Jokic is trying to become a 6th guy in that overall grouping, which would put him in obviously higher historical conversations, I guess. But unfortunately, Denver stinks. They're barely for it. They're 14-11. They just lost last night to the Trailblazers, who were 8-18 going into that game. They lost. Now they're 14-11, so they're basically teetering around that play-in line. I mean, there really is no compelling storylines other than maybe the Celtics looking to win back-to-back titles, the emergence of the Thunder, who, Jason, are historically great through this quarter point. Their net differential per game is 12 points per game. It puts them in a top 6, top 7 all-time team level standing if you look at that and extrapolate it out for the year. But no one really cares. People can barely even, name 2 players on Oklahoma City. Of course, everyone knows Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but he's kind of an understated guy. I personally love his game. He plays hard on both ends. He does do more than shoot threes. He's one of the few guys that has a command of the mid-range and the intermediate part of the floor. But he just doesn't have, I don't know if it is, he's again, another one of these foreign-born players. He's from Canada. And I just don't know it's his demeanor. He's not, that fiery, outspoken type of player that we see generally compel and captivate NBA audiences over the last, 30, 40 years. But I mean, whatever it is, there is not that compelling level of story right now in the NBA. And that probably, in addition to the lack of competition, is also probably hurting the overall product. And look, like I said, Jason, it's such a difficult question to answer because it's so complicated. We haven't even gotten into the politicizing players and that movement, which started around 2020, which also turned off like the majority of viewers on a daily basis, I would say.
Skap, thank you for making the time. Great job as always. Make sure you're visiting. Is it the Skap Attack or is it just Skap Attack? YouTube.com Skap Attack?
It's just Skap Attack.
Make sure you're visiting Skap Attack, just visiting his and subscribing to his channel. Thank you, Skap. We got to keep it moving. I do want to talk to you about Angel Studios' latest movie, Homestead. A nuclear blast devastates Los Angeles, throwing the nation into chaos in Angel Studios' upcoming film, Homestead, coming to theaters today. Amid the chaos, an ex-Green Beret joins a prepper compound. Next thing you know, there's love, there's truth, community unites, packed with heart-pounding tension, moral dilemmas, and a story that cuts to the core of what it means to survive. Homestead explores the humanity behind the apocalypse. Pre-order your tickets for a chance to win a $300,000 giveaway, which includes 1 Bitcoin, a fully furnished tiny home from Box House, a custom Polaris OHV by Sparks Motors, and everything else you'd need to start your own homestead. Pre-order tickets for your chance to win at angel.com/Jason. That's angel.com/Jason. See you at the theaters this Christmas season. Steve Kim from Saudi Arabia?
Wow.
X. Josh Allen is the MVP.
Yes.
There is no competition. Some people are saying it's between he and Lamar Jackson. No, it's not. It's between Josh Allen and himself. Can he run through the finish line here without some collapse in the last 3 regular season games? The guy, I'm not sure if I'm ready to call him the most talented quarterback in the history of the NFL. TJ Moe, John Elway would like to smite you across your face for saying that. But I get where you're coming from, but he is the MVP. There's no question about it. 36 total TDs, just 6 turnovers, completing 65% of his passes. This is his year. Now, he's going to have to back it up in the postseason and win a Super Bowl, or at least take them to a Super Bowl. But it is his MVP. There is no second. Saquon Barkley fell off of Eric Dickerson's pace yesterday. He's done. Lamar Jackson, very good season, but it ain't him. It's Josh Allen.
At this point, Josh Allen has the A-L-L, the E, and all you need is the N engraved on that trophy. There's no doubt about it. As I'm watching this game, and I actually switched away from the red zone to specifically focus on this particular contest, Josh Allen is one of the rare physical specimens we have ever seen. Here's a guy.
Yeah, 모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 reason that I'm back is to feed you raps when I see that you are 배불러 so fly.
All right, welcome back. We're going to give this a try. Steve Kim, live from Saudi Arabia. Steve, welcome to the show. Let's see how this goes. Oh, wow. You look a little different. What's life like over in Saudi Arabia? I know you got to be careful. Your room may be bugged. I don't want you to get arrested. Hope you're not trying to transport any marijuana or anything. Don't pull a Brittany Griner. How's Saudi Arabia?
With my contact lens, which has caused this issue, but I'm fine. I'm at the Mandarin Orient, so I feel right at home in this fine resort. Having a good time here to cover Tyson Fury in his rematch with Alexander Usyk, and it's good. It's probably, I know it is. It's the farthest I've ever traveled to cover a fight. It's been a very interesting experience out here.
Seriously, for those of us that have never been to the Middle East and haven't traveled that far, what's the weather like? What is the city? Does it look like just any normal city, any place, or what city you in?
Well,
what's it feel like compared to the United States?
The specific city that I am in is in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, which is, I don't know if it's the capital, but it's where they've had a lot of these big sporting events. There's a lot of money coming here. And as we were being driven from the airport, which, by the way, you want to talk about state-of-the-art airports, we did a layover in Qatar. It is the cleanest facility I've ever seen. There are hotel resorts which do not meet the standard of the lounge that we are in for our layover. And as you drive into Riyadh, the modern architecture is amazing. It's almost as if every single high-rise skyscraper has been built the last 10 years. And the thing that was eye-opening, because you don't see it for yourself till you're actually on the ground, incredibly westernized in terms of its corporate influence. There's a Dunkin' Donuts, there's Kentucky Fried Chicken, there's certainly a Starbucks. Everywhere you go on both sides of the street, there are many of the same businesses that you would see whether in your LA, California, or Nashville, Tennessee.
Years ago, I was in Tokyo for a month. And I went to McDonald's, and it didn't taste the same as our McDonald's at home. Ooh. So I would ask you to do a McDonald's taste test. Do they have a McDonald's in Saudi Arabia, and does it taste the same?
I've heard that. And Jason, when you say taste different, did it taste better? Because what I've been told by people that did the same thing you did, they'll actually point out that the food standards, as I go all R.F. Kennedy Jr. here, their quality of meat and ingredients in other countries, and specifically like Japan with McDonald's, is of a higher grade. So when you say different, was it better, or are you just really used to the mediocrity that you've come to know and love?
I'm really used to, McDonald's has a mediocrity that I've come to know, love, and enjoy.
Yeah.
And so I didn't feel like it was higher quality in Japan. I thought it was different. And it wasn't, I actually called Ronald McDonald while I was there. I was like, hey, bro, got to step up over here.
I mean, Jason, can I tell you a story?
Yeah.
One thing that my fine fellow Americans or Mexican Americans in the East LA area or any border town out here on the West Coast where I live, they prefer glass bottled Coke, which is specifically made in Mexico. For one reason, it's not the glass, it's the pure cane sugar. And there is a difference. When you go to a local market that has Mexican Coke, which is, again, the classic Coke bottle, as opposed to what you'll see at a chain supermarket, the taste is different. And in my view, Jason, far superior. Mexican Coke is a real thing if you talk to anyone out here on the West Coast.
Well, they give it to you uncut in Mexico.
Right.
Across the border, yeah. Anyway, Steve, were you able to watch any of the discussion or hear any of the discussion we've been having? Oh, okay. So, want you to chime in on my take, Jason McIntyre's take, and should we blame Barkley and these guys? I think it's social media is driving a lot of this conversation. People like Skap Attack and others are forcing a conversation about the quality of play, and obviously the All-Star game brings it to a head, but blaming Barkley and inside the NBA, I think, is kind of foolish. Social media is driving this conversation.
Well, all of a sudden, Charles Barkley's become the Joe Rogan of the NBA. There are so many similarities, Jason, and hello to you, Butter. But what took place on November 5th and leading into it with the election and the NBA? Now, they had an election. We have the television ratings. But think about it. For years, there's nothing wrong with the product. It's bigger. It's better. The analytics say it. The athletes are more athletic, and we like this game. Well, all of a sudden now the television ratings are down, and the stuff like the load management, the lack of defense. It's like, hey, we got to seal the border. Really? You had 3.5 years to seal the border. The economy's good. We got to fix this economy now. There's so many similarities if you think about it. And anyone that goes against the party line, they are now looked upon as an enemy of the state. How dare they tell the truth? And then you also look at some of the figures in the game. Steve Kerr, Popovich, they are highly, highly liberal, almost radicalized liberal. I believe that plays a part. What is going on is a referendum on the NBA, and just there are so many similarities between what happened in this last election with the Biden-Harris administration and with how the public reacted on the night of November 5th.
I think sports fans are like the rest of America, too, in terms of they're looking for a more authentic, transparent, honest conversation, and they won't tolerate the dishonest conversation or the conversation by omission. There's ways to lie without lying. You just omit talking about the real truth. And I see eventually this is going to catch up with the National Football League because there is a consistent conversation every NFL Sunday about the bogus, questionable officiating. And the people on TV will have a light conversation about it, but there is a thirst for a deeper conversation about what's going on with officiating in the NFL.
Jason, I don't completely disagree with you. I think there are some issues, but again, keep this in mind. With the National Football League, there's really only 17 games everyone plays, so there's a value to it, and it's the shortest regular season of any of our four major professional sports. We have a hunger towards it. The hold on the American public that the NFL has and football in general. I mean, now when high school players sign to a college, that's like a national holiday to some people. The NFL draft actually becomes a big ratings get for a couple of networks. We care about it. We do mock drafts. And then when football season rolls around, our attention span for one sport goes up exponentially at the cost of everything else. Problem with the NBA is once you tell me as Joe Public, oh my God, 82 games is too long, so we're going to hold guys out. You're essentially telling me, Jason, from November all the way till about mid-April, these games aren't important. Okay, we'll take your word for it. But Jason, let me dwell on that a little bit. I saw some tweet where another one of these guys was trying to rationalize why we need to shorten the season. Well, Jason, me and you grew up in the heyday of the National Basketball Association. There was never any discussion of a season being too long. Never. I never even heard it being discussed till a decade ago. And think about this, Jason. Those plumbers, they had to play 4 games in 5 nights. They often had to play, get this, back-to-back nights. In fact, sometimes they played on 3 consecutive nights. And up until about the late 80s, they even flew commercial. So once you lose the common man, okay, like a lot of the liberal elites did, and you lose a lot of the fan base that just wants to watch some entertainment. Think about what we're asking these guys to really do, Jason. We're not asking them to work in a factory. We're not asking them to go into a coal mine. They're not cleaning off windows 110th floor of the Sears Tower. We're asking them to play a game.
I hear you, Steve. I think at some point, it won't be to the level that the NBA has going on. But at some point, this conversation about NFL officiating and are these games being manipulated? Have we put referees in a bad spot where there's too many subjective calls? But there is a growing dissatisfaction, no different than there's been a growing dissatisfaction with, let's dial the clock back 14 years ago when LeBron left Cleveland to form a super team or whatever, and there were people grumbling like, hey, man, you cutting corners, you're cheating your way to a championship. And now it's all part of 14 years later, it's all part of an overall narrative of like, hey, man, these guys really don't want to compete. They load manage. They join up with other players to cheat their way to a championship. And then they just sit around and jack up threes. They don't really play defense. Flopping is a part of the game. And so part of what has changed about the NBA, people are saying, well, now it's hard to find the games. Not really, in my opinion. It's not hard. It's whether you want to go to the expense. But I guarantee you there was probably sloppy and uncompetitive play in the NBA in the 80s and the 90s, but not all the games were easily accessible. And so you just got the highlights of the fourth quarter and the compelling parts. And now that we can see everything, and now that the NFL, you can pretty much see everything. If you got YouTube TV and the NFL package, you can watch all the games. You can go back and watch games that you missed on Sunday and replay them. They're on Thursday night. They're on Monday nights. Now they're on Saturday nights. There's more eyeballs and more, and there's content creators that are dissecting any and everything, and it's exposing all the flaws. And so the flaws are harder to hide, and they're harder to avoid talking about. You have to for your own credibility.
Well, Jason, thankfully with guys like Jay Skap Attack, Dreamers Pro, Uncut Hoops, these guys do great jobs. There used to be a time 20 years ago, whatever the mainstream media said was held up as gospel. I believe that there's more, I would say, skepticism of that particular group of Americans than ever. And you know what? I think that's a great thing. So think about this, though, Jason. I will admit, there was a time, I would say somewhere in the 90s, near the end of Jordan's run and a couple years after, and I think it's also dovetailed with the New York Knicks game of force, which was led by Pat Riley. Those group was barbarians. Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason, John Starks. I'll admit, we have to be honest, I saw way too many 78, 75 games. I thought it was hard to watch. As someone that grew up on the Showtime Lakers, I was like, geez, this really isn't that great. And then I thought Mike D'Antoni did a great job of opening up a league-wide culture of a little bit more open basketball. But Jason, if every game in the NBA is now above 120 points, it's almost like if every football game was 77-70, it would be boring because there has to be a value to a point in terms of how you get it. Scarcity actually matters. And if every single baseball game was 15-14 and it becomes a glorified slow pitch softball game, well, guess what? Yeah, you basically diminish what Babe Ruth and then Barry Bonds did. So there has to be this happy medium. And I just look at some of these clips, and again, they are clips because I won't dare watch an NBA game. Where is the effort? And the other thing is, Jason, I sent you a clip about a week and a half ago. And again, some would say that I'm being overblown or the old man telling you to get off his lawn. Good. I'm proud of it. But the way these guys dress and present themselves and they do these catwalks into the locker room, I'm looking at the way these guys dress, and it's like a motley crew. It's like some, I don't want to say the word, but a couple of fashion shows you'd see in Europe from the alternative lifestyle community. And that just got me thinking, can we bring back the oversized throwback jerseys? Okay, we don't have to go back to Michael Jordan and the double-breasted suit. But at least back then, Jason, these guys look like hard men, like you wanted to relate with them. I think a lot of people look at these guys now and they're like, ugh, this is what we're rooting for? But that's just me.
I can't deal with the hairstyles. Everybody looks like Barney Rubble's wife. What was her, Betty?
Betty? Wilma?
Wilma,
nice.
That was Fred's wife. Betty. Yeah,
Betty.
Go ahead. Yeah,
Betty. This league has every opportunity with social media to be on fire right now because you could have so many ways to get behind the players. You get to know them. I akin it just to like Saturday Night Live. I feel like the cast plays such a role in how much we like it. Saturday Night Live is a great format and a great, place for comedy, but it's taken a nosedive in the last 10, 15 years because of the cast on there. I feel the same way about the NBA. They have so much opportunity but nobody is likable. There's no storylines we're hanging on to. There's nothing compelling about this entire league. There's nothing to hang on to. You can like Josh Allen in the NFL. You can like the San Francisco 49ers. You can like Shanahan's offense. You can like running. There's all of these things in the NFL.
Is Lamar Jackson going to win a Super Bowl this year? Yeah,
there's all of these different things you can look at, and it just doesn't take place in the NBA. It's non-existent. It's the cast. It's a terrible cast.
I want to move on, make the most of Steve's time here from Saudi Arabia. Stephen A. Smith was on the It Is What It Is podcast with Cameron and Mace. No Mace, just he and Cameron. He was talking a little bit about Skip Bayless. Then he delved into how much he hates me and I'm the devil. Let's play the clip.
What is your relationship with Skip Bayless today?
I don't have one.
Okay. Because that's what I was going to ask you. You know, real quick, I actually seen when, I can't remember exactly what it was, but Skip Bayless was going through something, and I guess, I don't know if it was the Shannon Sharp shit or what happened, but I remember you reached out to him, you said on your podcast, he didn't pick up the phone for you, and you was like, I tried. So that's why I was asking where you guys at today.
There's nothing, I have nothing bad to say. I'm eternally grateful to Skip Bayless, who brought me on First Take, as Shannon has articulated about himself as well, because you should never forget somebody that gave you that opportunity. You really, really shouldn't.
Right.
And when I say we don't have a relationship, it's not anything negative from my end.
Right.
It's me letting you know, yo, bro, I picked up the phone on several occasions and called him.
Right.
He never called me back.
Right.
And so, to me, if you that kind of person, that doesn't make you bad. It just means that we can't vibe, because I'm going to answer a call.
Right.
I'm going to answer a call. There's nothing, I got a lot of people over the last year or two that have really, really pissed me off.
Right.
I'm picking up the phone if they call.
Right.
There's only one person that I won't pick up the phone for. Everybody know who that person is, that no good, sorry ass. Everybody knows who that is. I don't have to say his name.
Right.
Outside of that one human being on the planet Earth, you understand, who I think is the human incarnation of the devil.
Right.
Everybody knows. Anybody else calls me, I'm going to pick up the phone.
Right.
And so Skip had his right not to pick up the phone when the whole Shannon thing was going down, and that's fine.
Right.
That's his prerogative. But live with that.
Right.
Do what you got to do. That's how you felt it was best. That's why I know Skip better than most. And I know that it wasn't malice or malicious intent with him not doing that. He's just a different cat. And he operates, you know, in a different way. I see him operating differently now than he did when he was on TV.
Right, absolutely.
You know, and in terms of, you know, wanting to talk to people more, as opposed to when he see me, I'm always me.
Right.
You know, and so that's not to say, again, anything negative about him, but our relationship goes back too long for me not to get a call from you.
Yeah, exactly.
When I called you.
Exactly.
And so when you made that decision, cool.
Right.
Live with your decision. I wish you nothing but the best. I hope he gets back. Whatever makes Skip happy, I'm hopeful it happens for him. I love his wife, Ernestine, who is an absolutely wonderful woman, and she's diehard Skip all day, every day, as any man would want.
Deal with his Skip Bayless thing. I think it's driven. Skip bailed Stephen A out when Stephen A was out of favor at ESPN. He brought him on, rehabilitate himself. And now that Skip is on his backside, Stephen A. Smith ain't trying to bail Skip Bayless out, and Skip don't want to hear from him. I don't blame Skip. I think, and again, obviously I probably have a bias, I think Stephen A. looks bad here.
Yeah, he does. His ego run amok. That whole diatribe had me thinking of New Edition. Mr. Telephone Man, there's something wrong with my line. Every time I dial Stephen A.'s number, I get a click every time. The whole ego to think, Jason, that you would want to call Stephen A. I mean, Jason, you barely return the calls from us, and you theoretically like us. And factually, we actually work with you. Seriously, if you can't return our calls, you rarely do within a day, you're never calling that guy, right? Let's be honest about this.
That is accurate. It may take me a little time, but I always return calls. It takes me a little.
Really?
But
Really? Okay.
His whole deal about I'm the devil. I'm just like, because I exposed the truth about you. And the other thing I find hypocritical or silly or just interesting is even someone like Cameron, rapper, he's got his money, he's got his popular podcast, but it's like he even knows, don't speak Jason Whitlock's name. Don't ask Stephen A. a follow-up question about this. Because in a natural conversation, if I were sitting here, Butter, talking about, there's one person I won't return their calls, or there's one person, you're natural as friends, who are you talking about, Whitlock?
Who you thinking?
Yeah, or you would, if you know who I'm talking about, don't you bust my balls and drop the name or whatever. But like, holy cow, these guys are afraid of me. That was what I heard.
Well, Jason, there's an old saying, the devil's in the details. Well, Whitlock, you got a lot of details. I'll say that much.
All right, we're going to keep it moving. Steve, Jon Gruden thinks Lamar Jackson is the MVP. Let's watch the former coach. Let's hear what he has to say.
Lamar Jackson had 4 incomplete passes and 5 touchdowns. They are balanced. They can slam it at you with Henry. They have an array of very good receivers and tight ends, and Justice Hill's a great receiving back. But Lamar Jackson is putting together his best body of work that I have seen. It's really incredible, his statistics based on any NFL standard that you've looked at. He's got 3,580 yards passing, 34 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. I mean, the only 2 guys that I could find that threw over 30 touchdowns and less than 5 interceptions was Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. So that's the kind of class that Lamar Jackson is throwing the ball with. And when you combine that with 743 yards rushing and 3 more touchdowns, good God, how is he not the MVP? I mean, it's going to be a shame. Somebody's not going to win it. But Lamar has played superb football.
I can tell you how he's not going to win it. He's got Derrick Henry in the backfield, and Josh Allen doesn't have Derrick Henry in his backfield. And Josh Allen's team is 11-3, and Lamar Jackson's team is 9-5. That's how he's not going to win it.
I agree, but Jason, there has to be an irony here. I know of 2 guys that were leading the Lamar Jackson for MVP talk for about a month and a half, 2 months. And we've kind of jumped off it, but I mean, Jon Gruden should be a lawyer. That is a brilliant case study laid out. And look at the numbers, though. I mean, what was the knock on Lamar Jackson, even in the MVP years? He's not a great natural thrower. His passing's a little bit not elite. It's pretty elite now, Jason. I mean, he does not put up a lot of clunkers. He's going to get right near or surpass 4,000 yards. He might hit 40-plus touchdowns. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot, and I get it. Derrick Henry plays a role. But you know what? Josh Allen gets a little bit of help, too. That's an improved running game. I don't think the wide receivers are great in Buffalo. But I get the sense there's 2 things at play. Part of the MVP is about who is the best team or maybe just the best quarterback on a team that is going to challenge for the best record. Now, that would be Mahomes, but statistically, Mahomes has been kind of mediocre despite the actual record. So I think this one year he's out. Now, Lamar Jackson already has a couple of those trophies in his trophy case. I saw this in the NBA a couple times with Michael Jordan. Every once in a while, and I don't know if it's repetitiveness or if they're sick of a guy, like in 1993, they gave an MVP to Charles Barkley, who had an incredible year. And in my view, the best player still had to be Michael Jordan. Then in 97, Karl Malone had a career year, leading the Jazz to the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Championship, where they ran into the Bulls. So they came up a couple games short. And again, who was really the best player that year? It was Jordan. So I think those are the dynamics at play this particular season that favored Josh Allen.
Steve, I want to move on to, there's some huge college football games this weekend. Obviously, playoff implications are in the playoffs. And then there's some huge Saturday NFL games. I mean, unbelievable. The NFL games, the weekend we have the Chiefs play the Texans, the Ravens play the Steelers on Saturday. Obviously, the college football playoff games, Notre Dame, Indiana is actually tonight. But Penn State, SMU, Texas, Clemson, Ohio State, Tennessee. Steve, here's Tony Kornheiser on Pardon the Interruption saying that college football is kind of picking a fight with the NFL. I'm not sure if I see it that way, but here's Tony Kornheiser talking about this collision that we're going to see on Saturday. Who's going to get hurt worse here, college football or pro football, with this collision? Here's Tony Kornheiser.
But football on football crime, Mike, this is pretty new. There are spots in this country, as you well know, having covered college football, where college football will outrate the NFL. I would think that an Alabama-Georgia game would outrate a Falcons-Saints game, for example, especially this year, because those teams aren't very good. I certainly think that's possible. The point I want to make here, though, is the NFL isn't going after college football. The NFL has had this Saturday window for years.
Decades.
After Army-Navy.
Yeah.
After Army-Navy, you get to play. This is college football attempting to spit in the eye of the NFL. This is a different thing.
Yeah, I understand why college football did it, although they could have put all 4 games on Friday. They could have essentially declared Friday college football playoff holiday. And they could have gone 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 11:30, whatever. They could have done that, and Friday, tomorrow, nobody's working tomorrow. And it's just not, certainly not in the second half of the day. They could have done that. They decided to go with the traditional Saturday, which, as you mentioned accurately, the NFL's been there for decades. In college, I remember watching these games on Saturday in the last couple of weeks of the regular season. Back when they had 14 games, they did this. So I think it's a big deal for another reason. You can watch all the games. I know you are the last person in America who refuses to have a second screen. Most of
I don't
us,
have multiple
because
TVs.
even if you have an 80-inch screen, you can have your laptop, you have a handheld. Everybody watches more than one screen. Go to your local bar. You can watch everything. This is a bonanza. This is a big deal for that reason.
I got one set, but I'm going to start with the college games. But, Mike, I want to see how Patrick Mahomes does on a bad ankle, and I want to see Lamar Jackson against Pittsburgh. I mean, as much as I love college football, those games are really games I want to see.
Steve, your thoughts here. Albert Breer wrote a story, I think, for Sports Illustrated, going into some of the details of how the NFL and college football did try to have a meeting and tried to not be going up against each other, couldn't work it out, and they went their separate ways and said, we'll both be fine. Your thoughts on college football and pro football competing with each other this Saturday?
I kind of disagree with what. Look, the NFL's infringed on anybody, on everybody. I mean, there used to be a time when Thursday night used to be the official kickoff of the football weekend. It used to put on a really, really good game. Guess what? Since the NFL took over, the ESPN packages on Thursday night for college football have been awful. There's maybe 1 or 2 handful of games. Friday night used to be about high school. There used to be legislation to protect Friday nights for high school. Well, then colleges started using it. Now, here's the issue. When I think of college football in general, guys, I think of fall Saturday afternoons, no other day. In the National Football League, I think of Sundays and then Mondays. So if the NFL is going to seep into these other dates, guess what, guys? You're going to inevitably have some issues here. So, and I will say this, though. Since the first round of the playoffs are on home campuses, maybe there's an argument you can go Thursday, Friday. Maybe. But the reality is, if you put all the games on a Friday afternoon and you don't want them running into each other, they don't want those games on the afternoon on a Friday. I think that's television programming 101. So I disagree. Look, this is going to be inevitable as soon as they went to an expanded 12-team playoff. And the NFL's been infringing on everyone else's territory for about 25 years. So what comes around goes around.
Do you think, I mean, because these are great NFL games. These are great NFL. You got Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, probably the two biggest stars in the National Football League. Steelers, huge brand. Obviously, the Chiefs are a dynasty. C.J. Stroud and Texans, young team, good record, playoff implications. All these guys are in the playoff hunt. Who do you think the college ratings are hurt? I have looked.
Yes.
The ticket sales for these games aren't that strong in terms of you can pay a reasonable price and get inside to see any of these college football games this weekend. Do you think college football gets hurt here?
Yes. Look, the number one league in the world in terms of television ratings in America, okay? It's the National Football League. A distant second, and I mean being distant, is college football. I am the minority. I realize that. As someone who loves football, I like college football much better, pay much more attention to it, much more closely. It's a passion of mine. Football is something I happen to watch on Sundays to fill up the time, and I have to watch it. But I realize, I would say out of the 10 hardcore football fans like me, 7 or 8 of them probably care a lot more about the National Football League than they would about college football. So, but you talk about the get-in prices for this weekend not being that great. It doesn't really surprise me all that much, Jason. Much like March Madness, the NCAA basketball tournament. We all love March Madness. We all love the first weekend. Field of 64 and now I believe 68 plus play-in games. The get-in prices for those particular arenas on that first weekend aren't all that great. Where it really ramps up, if I'm not mistaken, starting right around the Sweet 16. Okay, so I think we're seeing the same type of dynamic here in this inaugural 12-team football playoff.
All right, hey, let's go through these games, starting with the pro games. Just give people a little insight into what we're thinking is going to happen here. We'll talk about the point spread a little bit. I know you're not much of a gambler, but your boy is. The Chiefs minus 3.5 over the Texans. I actually I like the Texans here. I think Patrick Mahomes being a bit banged up. I think the Texans need this a tiny bit more than the Chiefs. I like the Texans plus 3.5.
You know, the Texans have a good record. I don't think they've been as good as they were last year, and certainly C.J. Stroud has I want to say slump. He's at a sophomore bump. Now, where's this game? In Texas?
Kansas City. Kansas City.
Okay, you know what? Give me the Chiefs. Give me the Chiefs. I still think they find a way. They're probably going to be losing in the last 4 minutes. Patrick Mahomes will probably be on his last toe, and you know what? He'll find a way to win the game. Give me KC here.
Game 2, the Ravens minus 6.5 over the Steelers. To Butter's chagrin, I think some of the shine is coming off Russell Wilson the past couple of weeks. I think it's going to come even more off. I think the Ravens win this big. I think they cover the 6.5, win big here.
I'm with you. There's an old gambling pattern that in divisional games, in the second game, when the team that lost is at home and they're a good enough team, they generally make a statement and even up the score. And I still have faith that the Ravens' best, most consistent football is in front of them. I like Baltimore here to cover the spread.
Move to the college football playoffs. We'll start with tonight's game. Notre Dame minus 6.5 over Indiana. Steve, I'm going to have to lean into you here. Notre Dame has looked pretty good other than the Northern Illinois game. They've beaten up some decent teams. They won some squeakers. They're I think 12-1 or 11-1 or I think 12-1. Indiana's only lost one game, and that was to Ohio State. That Ohio State game was actually closer than the final score. What do you like here, Notre Dame, Indiana?
I think Notre Dame's going to actually make a run. They're going to play for more than just making a playoff. The Northern Illinois game, it happened, it counts, it mattered. But from that point on, they've been able to steady Riley Leonard, who's not a natural thrower of the football all the time. But that defense I believe is salty and it's tough, and the game's in South Bend. And by the way, the last time a Notre Dame home game was not on NBC was years ago. And I remember the first NBC game under the Notre Dame contract featured Indiana with Trent Green and Von Dunbar. So I talk about things coming full circle, but give me the Fighting Irish here.
Yeah, the weather, that's the other thing about it's going to be really cold. Colleges don't play home games at this time of the year. They're usually in some warm weather environment during bowl season. I think that's going to be interesting. I don't like football games in super bad weather. This will be interesting what the weather was like. I think there's been some snow in Indiana. We shall see. Penn State -9 over SMU. I like the Nittany Lions here. I think SMU's had its fun and it's over.
Yeah, Penn State, I've said this numerous times, they're not dynamic outside, but they're very good all the way around. I just get the sense they got more bigger, stronger bodies. And you know, SMU is located in Dallas. I'm not saying that's the tropics, but I don't know when the last time they ever played in a game, as it's going to be this weekend out there in Happy Valley. Give me Penn State. I like them to cover the spread, too.
Texas has a big number. -12 over Clemson. Could be Quentin Ewers' last game. If they somehow lost, he may be headed off to North Carolina or who knows where. But I much as I'll be rooting for Dabo, Sweeney, and those guys, I do think Texas is going to make easy work of Clemson.
You know, I kind of like Clemson to cover the spread here. Look, Dabo Sweeney is the Frank Sinatra of college coaches. He does it his way, except now he's hitting the portal. So he's getting into the 21st century. Clemson has some big bodies defensively on all three layers. I believe they have future NFLers. And offensively, Cade Klubnik's been pretty good. I'm just telling you, he's actually been a guy that I believe will play at the next level. Well, Quinn Ewers has been a little bit disappointing this season, like Texas, but give me the number with the Clemson Tigers.
Ohio State -7.5 over Tennessee. Ryan Day coaching for his job. If he loses this game, he's probably toast. I expect Ohio State to play really well here, and I would actually take Ohio State and take that 7.5 points. They're going to cover, in my view.
The most pressure-packed game for any coach in round number one is that man right there. And I'm with you. And I'm going to, again, familiar theme. When was the last time the Volunteers played in weather like this, with this type of temperature? And again, I get it. They flubbed and they choked away the game to Michigan. But I look at that Ohio State roster, and maybe it's just too tantalizing for me. I still believe it's one of the most talented rosters in all of college football. And if they lose this game here, with that $20 million NIL budget or package to only get to the playoffs and go one and done at home, I'm not saying it's a fireable offense for Ryan Day, but it would certainly be a letdown. So I like Ohio State here to cover, and then we'll see what happens, but I do like them in this spot.
I've only got one question on the way out of here. Jason won't ask the hard questions. I want to know, Steve. He asked about McDonald's. I want to know, what's the ladies like in Saudi Arabia?
They're covered up.
But there's
I mean, we could talk college football if you want. I want to know what the ladies are like in Saudi Arabia.
Most of them are covered up, but there's foreigners. They look nice. I went to the Ring Magazine relaunch party, and there was some talent there. But, you know, Butters, I've been taught when you go to other countries, you respect that culture. It's
you gotta ask.
Let me ask this question: in Saudi Arabia, will there be ring girls, or will the ring girls be in dresses?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They none of these shows that have been put on by Turki Al-Sheikh and his organizations have that. They just don't believe it. It's not what they do. And again, I'm in their country. There's no complaints.
Good for them. All right, Steve, we're gonna let you go. Thank you so much for making the time. Enjoy the rest of your time in Saudi Arabia. Safe travels back. Merry Christmas to you and Mario Lopez. All right, we're going to bring my man TJ Moe into the show. Next. Josh Allen is the MVP.
Yes.
There is no competition. Some people are saying it's
Exercise your brain, exploit yourself for gain, exceed your own expectation, expose your every flaw, explain to one and all how to excel in every situation. But don't put an X in my Christmas, 'cause Jesus is the reason for it all. Yes, Santa Claus is cool, but when I celebrate my Yule, it's about that baby in the manger, and not how I deck my halls. Don't put an X in my Christmas, oh, 'cause Xmas in my world will never do. But if you have to put an X in something, then Twitter's got an X that's just for you.
All right, welcome back. TJ, there was one thing I wanted to cover with you because this Aaron Rodgers, Ryan Clark thing just keeps going on and on and on, and people are fascinated by it, and I'm a bit fascinated by it, the whole Pat McAfee versus everybody at ESPN. And so Stephen A. Smith had some comments on his, I believe, podcast where he somewhat seemed to threaten Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers and Ryan Clark have been going back and forth. Pat McAfee is certainly on Aaron Rodgers' side. We've speculated that, like, no, you got this feud going on at ESPN between the McAfee camp and the Stephen A. Smith camp. Ryan Clark obviously on Team Stephen A. Aaron Rodgers clearly on Team Pat McAfee. Here's Stephen A. Smith chiming in with sounds like kind of a threat towards Aaron Rodgers. Let's play the clip.
Going after Ryan Clark, that ain't gonna do much for you. That ain't gonna do much for you. Ryan Clark and I have gone at each other in the past. You don't have a platform every day like I do. You don't want to go at Ryan Clark. That is not a winnable situation for you, Aaron Rodgers. In fact, it's almost as bad of a situation as it has been you going out on the field on Sundays in the Jets uniform. You might want to think about that. Just friendly words of advice. That's all I want to say about that.
Aaron Rodgers doesn't have a platform every day like Stephen A. Smith, but people actually do legitimately care what Aaron Rodgers has to say, whether they like him or not. Anyway, TJ, your thoughts here.
Yeah, that's the second time I've listened to it. The first time it sounded to me like Stephen A. might jump in on this, as though he was the big brother protecting him. I didn't think it sounded like that the second time here. It sounded to me like, hey, you know, I've sparred with Ryan Clark, but I got a platform to do it every day. You don't. You can't win. It was more of the media's got more power than you do. It's a Stephen A. delusion, obviously, because the only reason anybody's talking about Ryan Clark at all right now is because of Aaron Rodgers. That's it. Aaron Rodgers has a Netflix series about him right now. Everything Aaron Rodgers does is more interesting than anything Ryan Clark has ever done. What is Stephen A. talking about? I can't name something that Ryan Clark has done that's been interesting. This is why I say he knows football, but does he have interesting opinions? Is Ryan Clark funny? Is he entertaining? What does he do to make news besides get into altercations with people who are more interesting, such as Donald Trump? He said the thing about Donald Trump, and that was his news. His apology was more news than him saying he would respect him. He's just, again, Ryan Clark could sit up there all day with the ESPN platform, and still nobody cares. I don't know what else to say about it.
There's a clip, and I should have gotten this earlier today, but there's a clip of Ryan Clark talking about Travis Hunter's girlfriend. And it's another one of these over-dramatized, they show his sidekicks and their expressions. And I should have asked for it because I did want your clip. I want to see if we can try to sneak it in here, if someone can hunt it down. Man, I can't. I just saw it this morning.
I'll look for it if you want to keep talking.
Well. Anyway, Ryan Clark's entire shtick is built off of race baiting, and ESPN has a little racial conflict and racial war going on that they can't seem to manage. It's not a recipe for success. These things are going to keep bubbling and bubbling and bubbling. And again, ESPN is really poorly managed at this point. Most companies are poorly managed as it relates to dealing with this racial issue because the leadership, generally speaking, is white, and they're afraid to step in and say, hey, guys, here's how we're going to do this racial thing, or here's who is going to talk about it here, who's not going to play. It's not your role. And so basically, guys like Ryan Clark, Stephen A. Smith, they have free reign to say and do whatever they want and smear white people in any way that they want, and no one can say anything to them. And then if you have black leadership, they think the same thing as what they're supposed to think in those positions. They're leftists, they're race baiters, they got the victim mentality. And so I do think as it relates to white athletes, ESPN is really flirting with danger by letting this conflict between Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee continue. Stephen A. is going to eventually, could potentially, and again, he's already signed it or he's about to do this new deal with ESPN, and so maybe he feels untouchable. But at some point, this thing's going to spin so far out of control, the racial conflict, that someone at ESPN is going to have to make a decision. We're going to roll with Pat McAfee or we're going to roll with Stephen A. Smith. And who knows, Aaron Rodgers doesn't have the popularity at the moment to perhaps win an overall feud, but there's going to be some white athlete that does have the popularity and is successful enough. Again, I can sit here and think if somehow Stephen A. and Ryan Clark pick a fight with Josh Allen, someone who's having a lot of success and who has previously been smeared by ESPN and perhaps has some leftover residue from that, that's going to blow up in ESPN's face. It's already, after the events on November 5th, but once the inauguration in January 20th, and we get deeper and deeper into this MAGA world and this post-Black Lives Matter, post-George Floyd world that we're living in, there is some risk here for Stephen A. Smith and the whole racial idolaters on that side that Stephen A. could put himself in a position where ESPN has to make a choice between himself and Pat McAfee, and if they'll just go to the data, and that's going to favor Pat McAfee. As popular as Stephen A. Smith thinks he is, it's not an organic popularity. It's a forced popularity.
You said he has no base. He has no base.
Yeah, he doesn't have a passionate fan base. Take a Dave Portnoy and Barstool. They got a fan base that they will attack people that go after Dave Portnoy because they like Dave Portnoy that much. Pat McAfee has that same thing. Stephen A. Smith has no base. He has an audience that ESPN has given him through repetition, but people that are ride or die with Stephen A. Smith does not exist. Even among these celebrities that that's my brother. you know, because we've all lived long enough to remember when Skip Bayless was his brother. And then things got rough for Skip Bayless, and Stephen A. dusted him. Same thing would happen between he and Shannon Sharpe. If something business-wise falls out, Shannon Sharpe ain't his brother no more. And Ryan Clark's not his brother anymore. Stephen A. has no base. He should be careful here, tread a bit more lightly. TJ?
Yeah, so your point about go to the data is so obvious, and they're also Stephen A. knows all of this. That's why one, he's making the pivot, and he backed off. If you look, sometime in the last 4 or 5 months, he backed off his criticism of Aaron Rodgers and his vaccine stance after being very critical of him previously, like everyone else. This is why he's making this podcast and trying to get some internet audience, because at some point soon, very soon, and we've already seen it used to be 100 million cable subscribers. We're down in like the 75 million range, something like that now. At some point, and that point is coming very, very soon, these streaming audiences are taking over, and the guys have to be able to do what Pat McAfee has done. Pat McAfee has already proven that he can do it. Pull up the Pat McAfee show on YouTube at any given time, and you'll see 50 to 75,000 people watching in that moment. This guy owns the internet. Stephen A. does not own the internet, and he's frustrated about it. You can tell. ESPN is not stupid. Their golden goose here is Pat McAfee, and he's young. I actually think Stephen A.'s expiration date is coming up sooner than later.
I agree with that. Don't you think ESPN's allowing this to string along? They're deleveraging Stephen A. Smith. I think they're quietly in favor of this feud, and as unintelligent as I think they've been throughout the years, I think this is a plot that they don't mind playing out in front of us. They like this. It's devaluing Stephen A.'s control over ESPN.
I don't know. I think they're about to give Stephen A. or have given Stephen A. this new contract extension. I think they're pretty locked in with Stephen A. for the next.
That contract still doesn't take away some of his leverage. They might pay for that, but I don't think the control that he's kind of had over ESPN will remain.
That may be true. And you know, whether or not that's coming from Jimmy Pitaro or Bob Iger on down, or if there are mid-level executives or executives that are, hey, let's let this play out. Stephen A. is going to step on his junk, and let's let him go ahead and do it because he's too entitled. He's too ungrateful. He's full of himself, and he's not recognizing that we did this, Stephen A. We kept you on TV. We forced you down people's throats. We made you who you are. You haven't broken a story. You don't provide any kind of real insight. Again, you don't have a base. I mean, again, he has an audience, but he doesn't have a base. There's no one sitting out there. He doesn't, again, he just doesn't have a fan base, and Pat McAfee does. Others do. He doesn't.
Butter.
Very fascinating.
Butter, that's a good take. That's a very good take. And I wonder, Jason, you actually know this guy, and so I'm totally guessing here. You would know the answer. I wonder if Norby Williamson was a guy that was getting in the way of this fight in some way, because Pat says he was sabotaging them and he was undermining what they were doing. I wonder if ESPN is smart enough to have cleared the deck here and said, we don't have to push the woke narrative in the executive world anymore. Let it play out. And whatever happens here goes to Stephen A. will at some point, like you said, make himself look so foolish, and it will be so out in the open, and we don't have to pull the strings on the back end anymore, that you let Pat McAfee bury him. And I think that could happen. I think it will happen at some point very soon.
Well, Stephen A.'s executive that has his back is not Norby Williamson. I'm sorry, is Dave Roberts. Black dude that made his bones in radio. He's risen up. He and Stephen A. have risen together. Dave Roberts, bit of acquired taste. It depends on who you talk to. I don't have anything super negative to say about Dave Roberts or super positive. Guy treated me relatively well in my limited dealings with him. He is the guy that has Stephen A's back. Some people think that, you know, Dave's kind of limited, but all those executives, I don't know if I've met one that wasn't limited. Norby was the guy that I did think was pretty talented, pretty smart, pretty bold, had a set of convictions, and he probably was more on Team Stephen A than clearly than Pat McAfee. McAfee didn't like him. And so losing Norby could end up biting Stephen A in the rear. That's anyway. We'll pay attention to that. TJ, I'm going to let you go because we've gone long and I want to get to Christmas break and I want people to get to Christmas break and I want to get to Shamika Michelle as we wrap up our final live show before Christmas break. We will have some content during the Christmas break, so don't go anywhere. But the full live show will be gone until early January, so stick with us. But Shamika Michelle, next. Welcome to Extra Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Oh my God, Lyndon Johnson, his thoughts are so disgusting. I can't believe he would engage with him. The celebration for being a slut have never been greater. Why do you choose Taylor Swift and why do you pick up a role as, let me help my woman undress on stage in front of an audience?
When I look at people like Sexy Red or Cardi B that we prop up, now I see that the white community as well is just as fried.
It does look to me like he made some eye contact with her and then just decided, nah, let me move on. The BET Awards seems like a psyop at this point. It's just Democratic brainwashing. Get in there and fight for all the things. Steve, that's it for you. I'm done.
What's poppin' in the chat? What's poppin' in the chat?
All right, welcome back. Shamika Michelle, they've already asked the question. I'll ask again. What's popping in the chats?
Well, Butter's family started us off today. They said, the Butter Show. Happy Friday, Butterites.
Oh, the Butter Show.
Did they spell it with an S at the end, or did
they pluralize me?
Yeah, the Butters. Yeah, they got it.
You don't like the plural butter thing.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's not that hard to say.
We all know it's the Fearless Show with Jason Whitlock. It's not the Butter Show.
Yeah.
Whitlock with butter. Whitlock with butter is what they want to change the show into. It's not going to happen, Butter.
Come on, baby. Let's go.
It's not going to happen. Next.
Team chat.
All right, super chat from the Doran Williams Show. And people were generous today, Jason. This may have been our best day.
It's Christmas.
Yes. He said AAU ball is why the NBA sucks. AAU attracts the best talent. Sorry, my eyes messed up. Subtracts the best talent. Sorry, give me a second. Attracts the best talent, but is the worst brand of basketball. Plus, the kids never practice overseas. They are pros by 15 years old and have 3 practices before every game. There should have been a period behind practice.
Anyway, he's absolutely right that summer basketball, not AAU basketball, but summer basketball is part of a big problem with competition and transferring and joining this team and joining that team. They've been doing it since summer basketball, and it carries right over into the NBA. They don't learn anything about loyalty, not even now in college sports, because everybody just transfers college team to college team. Great point, Dorn, and thank you for the super chat. Next.
Sir Tice says, clowns like McIntyre and JJ love pointing to it's better skill-wise, when they're really only talking about excessive ball handling and shooting. Mid-range, post-game, various cuts have all but vanished.
Yeah, this whole skill deal is, you know, maybe they dribble more between their legs, but there used to be a time when guys didn't dribble between their legs because it was unnecessary. It's not that they couldn't do it, it's unnecessary. And so they look or put on the illusion of being more skilled, but are they really? And again, do they know how to set a screen? Do they know how to cut off a screen? Do they know how to catch and shoot from the mid-range the way that they used to? No, they don't. And again, I don't want to take a full dump because mostly it's just a lack of competition. Do they know how to compete? Do they understand the value of competition? Do they understand the value of showing up to work every day? That's a skill as well that has been lost and diminished. And just because guys can jump higher, because maybe the drugs have improved and the workouts have improved, doesn't make them more skilled. Next.
Robert Lee, Super Chat, says these players are more known for their baby mamas than their actual production on the court. The threes, load management, and wokeness equals bad product.
I cannot disagree with any of that. You know, there is a lot more gossip about these players, and we know more about their personal lives than previous generations. A lot of that's on social media. Maybe it's not their fault. If there had been social media back in the day, maybe we would have known that Dr. J had a baby that would turn out to be a tennis star. I think, what's her name? Sloane Stevens, maybe, or Sloane Stevenson. But we didn't know that then because there was no social media. So there is that. Next.
I chose this one, Jason, because I see it and I'm not even a sports fan. So Zachariah Cameron said, seriously, one of the issues is that the coaches look like slobs. They stopped wearing suits after COVID and not one coach has gone back to it. They don't look the part.
I don't watch enough of the NBA to know if no coach wears a suit. I do know that many don't. And that is something.
Little Tom Landry on the sidelines.
Yeah, guys like Pat Riley used to be dressed really sharp, coaching NBA basketball games, and that has gone out of style. That did set a professional tone to things, and like we're here to do something serious. Everybody's kind of gone business casual, and the plays become more casual. Decent point. Next.
Okay, Christopher Powell, I think this is from yesterday. Super Chat, he's responding to you, Jason. He said, ban the butter box or add the double fish fillet box for you, Jason, because you've had some takes that are worse than butter have gave us. I'm going to rank my favorite people on this show, and you're not number one. So he sent another super chat to say, number one, Steve Kim. 2A, the Walker Bros, Tennessee Harmony Crew. 2B, Butter. 3A, Shamika. She doesn't like short guys. 3B, Delano. 4, JB. 5, TJ. 6, Hadley. Last, it's you, JW. Thanks for creating an awesome show. You're awesome.
Wow.
Right before Christmas, Jason.
After Hadley.
I mean,
holy cow.
I didn't like hearing that.
Mr. Powell, thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the comments. Thank you for the love. Anybody that I'm not taking shots at means I don't like them. So obviously Mr. Powell likes me. That's why he's taking the shots. Love it. Thank you. Next.
Scott J wants to know, how old is our main man, Butters?
38.
Scott, I'm a little uncomfortable with that question.
Yeah, they're getting personal on me now.
Why does he want to know how old you are, Butter?
Yeah, I know.
Does he want your phone number next?
What's my sign? I'm a Virgo. I like long walks along the beach.
Next.
Last two. Solomon says, ask Jason his thoughts on Stephen A. Roland Martin beef, and he loves the show.
I think that's a work, WWF, WWE wrestling work, that's kind of set up for Stephen A. to pretend like even Roland Martin doesn't like me. Those two guys are cut from the same cloth. They're both boule. They're both paid actors, and so I don't think much of it. Next.
Joseph Morrison says, were you ever a fan of Howard Stern?
Yes, I was. I owned the book Private Parts. I watched the movie Private Parts. Howard Stern used to be really funny and really inappropriate. And, you know, I wasn't a hardcore fan, but yes, I got a sense of humor. I used to have a really raunchy sense of humor, and Howard Stern filled that void for me. But I've never seen a bigger sellout than Howard Stern. Nobody more fraudulent and a sellout than Howard. I can remember the first day Howard Stern got on Twitter, me and him got in a beef, a back and forth on Twitter. I can't remember what I called him out for, but we went back and forth, and then he's never spoken to me since.
I bet you got some stories, Jason Whitlock.
Yeah, I got a few.
Yes.
I got a few. But anyway, Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas, Shamika. I hope Santa's good to you. There's no
Thank
coal
you.
in your
Merry
stockings. We'll see you guys in the new year. I'll be around. I'm going to put out some content over the Christmas holiday season. I think Jack's going to help me out. Butter's going to help me out. But you guys, enjoy your Christmas. Enjoy your Friday. Get your shopping done. We'll play tomorrow, and we'll see you sometime next week.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna be. I wanna be. I just